If you follow the mograph Slack channel for Octane, or X, you might see the additive emissive material breakdown by the one and only Dino Muhić. And it's really quite simple and extremely rewarding, especially if you're looking to make particles pop and feel a bit more abstract and dreamy. So let's dive in and take a look at how we can make this shader our own. Let's start off with a simple sphere. And we're going to drag a universal material on this, and we're going to turn a daylight on just so we can see it and see how things are reacting. If we jump into this shader, on the universal shader, we have to adjust some properties. We have to take our albedo down to black, so no diffuse, no color. And then we have to do a few other things. We have to take the IOR all the way down to 1, and our transmission all the way to white. But we don't leave it at diffuse. We're going to change it over to thin wall, and immediately it disappears. So technically we just created air. And if we go over to the common section, we can see fake shadows, so we'll enable that too. So right now we have nothing. It's pretty much non-existent. It's air. So let's add an emissive material and we'll go from there. I like to add a black body emission. So we'll add a black body emission, and now we're going to turn our daylight off, and I have just a black HDRI, or white set to 0, so black. And we can see an emission right now, but we want to adjust a few things. We want to give it some color, so let's just give it an RGB spectrum just for this instance. And let's give it a little bit of red or pink. Let's jump into the black body emission. Let's remove cast shadows, so there's no shadows being casted. Let's take our power down to maybe 0.75 and enable surface brightness. So now we have a pink orb. And if we go ahead and turn our cloner back on that we had, let's jump out of here, and you can see that we have this additive emissive material that's a little bit bright for my taste. So let's jump back in and let's crank this emission power down to about half where it was. And now you can see the layered effect of the additive material itself, which is really quite cool. I mean, this is a pretty lame example, but you can see the potential. So if we add that random back in, we're going to get different sizes, different positions, and we have all of these different little orbs floating. And this really works well with like cloners, mograph, particles, etc. For me, I like a little bit more color and variation, so that's why I created it this way. And using a Gaussian spectrum, and within the wavelength, I'm piping in a random color. And the random color is assigning a black and white and gray value in between to every single instance. And that's going to give us a different value, a different hue of emission. And we can seed that out and change that as we like. So that's really cool. So let's jump into a different camera I have set with some shallow depth of field, and we see some really nice bokeh going on. What's really cool about this is it's not just for spheres. You can use this for any kind of geometry. So let's plug in a platonic, and we get a really similar effect. Inside the random effector, if we hop into the rotational data, we enable it, and we can add some random rotational values per instance. And it feels pretty solid. So that's the shader itself. Pretty simple to set up, but also really cool and really, really fast. I mean, these frames are rendering almost real time. It's really quickly. So let's see how this looks with particles. If we jump into this other scene, and you hover over real quick, I'll scrub through. I have a quick little particle setup ready to go, and just some orange and blue particles swirling around like a tornado. And let's jump into some frames. Let me fire up Octane. And we can see that same principle here. We have this additive, emissive orbs all the way through this particle simulation, and it looks really, really nice. And let's hop into a few different frames. So this is where you can art direct and really dive in and start putting color and different, wavelengths. I'm using the Gaussian spectrum once again with orange and blue. So I'm using a bit of a variation here. So I'm mixing a texture of the instance color. And instance color is pulling from the particles themselves, and I'm mixing that with a Gaussian spectrum, just so I have a little bit more of that really punched color. The blues, the oranges, all of that really, pulls through. But that's really it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Quick little tip, and I'd love to see you guys use this same, method and show off some of your particle simulations. Cheers.